Hey, so this is the Drunkalogs, a podcast about addiction and recovery in which each guest shares their version of how it was, what happened, and how it is now, and then endures a half-hour Q&A at the hands of your host, Nick Morton. I've never regretted having one of these conversations. I always get some insight into what it means to be a human or an addict, and in today's episode, I got an insight into that old adage, relapse is part of the process of recovery. And while it's not always the case, I think sometimes lessons are difficult to learn. We rarely understand our experiences as they are happening to us, but the positive ones maybe leave their marks, and sometimes maybe those marks are enough to lead us home. My next guest first attended a 12-step meeting long before he got sober, but I can't help but believe it showed him a path he could take when the time was right. Won't you please welcome John Machado.
So I grew up in the Bay Area in Hayward, California, just south of Oakland. And now I'm out in the East Bay, a little east of there, in Concord, California. Yeah.
And were you an only child or you have siblings?
No. I'm the youngest of five.
Youngest of five. So you probably had a well-worn path into partying already laid for you?
100% going to in junior high, with my brother to high school parties. Exactly. Kegger parties.
And so like when did you have your like first sort of drink?
Right around probably sixth grade, just before junior high, first beer.
Right.
Yeah.
First beer. And did you get drunk or was it just like
no, first time, no, but at the Kegger party, yes.
So your first beer, it was just like, was it a barbecue or some sort of like
a friend of mine up at his house? He stole a beer, one of those deals, and we drank that nasty beer. You know what I mean? And the taste of it was nasty at first. So
right,
yeah.
Just were your parents drinkers?
So that's a good question. My mom, no. So I'm a product of a Portuguese father, Irish Catholic mom. So it was that whole thing. My mom didn't drink. Didn't smoke.
I mean, wait a minute. There's no that whole thing. Like, I mean, who knows what that means? I'm just sort of.
That's true.
So, but it's your mom's Irish Catholic and doesn't drink because I come from an Irish Catholic family where everyone drinks.
Right. And both her parents were alcoholics.
So she was sort of like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then my dad, there was rarely alcohol in the house, but if he went out and got to drink, he always came home trashed.
Right.
If he drank. So right. Yeah.
And was that like a source of tension between them or not really?
Yeah. Well, there was always tension because he's on the violent side of things. He was a pretty violent dude. And so
in general or just when he drank?
No, in general. It didn't take alcohol.
What kind of work did he do?
He was a construction worker. But he's the product of growing up on a dairy farm.
Right.
So he was working the farm as a young kid. My grandfather
in Portugal.
No, my grandparents are from the Azores, but no, he grew up here in California, but didn't speak English till he was around 5.
Wow.
So and he was not happy about growing up on a farm.
Right.
It was one of those deals. Yeah. So he had some issues with that, and then being the funny thing about it is my parents' 5 kids. By the time I was born, he was 22.
Your dad,
he was 22 by the time the 5th kid was born.
Sorry, it took me a minute to
possibly
understand that. That is crazy.
I know.
So how old was he when the first child was born?
So he was 17. So my sister
just had a child every year.
That Catholic birth control. In fact, my sister and I, 4th and 5th kids, we're not even 12 months apart. We're 11 months.
I mean, what
days.
Finally stopped them?
The pill, but I didn't know that at the time. Right. But the pill, and that was like, I remember my mom talking, she recently passed a little over a year ago. She was telling me that was such a big deal about not taking that pill. It was such against the Catholic religion. Right.
But when you're having a kid every year, it's like, shit, we got to do something.
Right. And so
that's kids all within 5 years. That must have been a crazy house to grow up in.
Yeah, it was. Like my sister Marlene just turned 68 yesterday. She's the oldest.
Uh-huh.
I'll be 63 in December.
Uh-huh.
So she turned 5. 2 months later, I was born, 5th kid.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's amazing. And so like of the 5 of you, are you all alcoholics, or did it miss some of you, or?
So it's a good question. No, I would say one of my brothers, yes. The other brother, weed. When I say weed, he'd been smoking weed since junior high.
Right.
And they're all older than me. I just told you what my age was. And then I have a sister in the program. And when I see in the program recently, 11 months, she was 11 months.
That's amazing.
11 months on the 3rd. So yesterday she was 11 months.
Never too late.
No. And she's doing great. And then my oldest sister, no, nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so then so you have you get drunk at your first kegger in junior high, and is it awesome?
It awesome to the point of even puking. And I even thought once I got through that was the feeling was awesome. Right. So just consumed until my body rejected it.
Right.
Yeah. But love the feeling. And then I tell everybody today that I loved alcohol on an empty stomach.
Oh yeah. Amazing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I at one point had drunk a hole in my stomach, and, if I put, sort of 8 shots of alcohol into that hole, it was really amazing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And so
total illness.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. And so when people ask me, because I was just at a function in Texas, I was down there for business, and we rented a private box at a baseball game, and people, so you don't drink, not even beer? I said, no.
Yeah.
And then I tell my sobriety date, and they go, okay.
Yeah. I find people, it's weird. Like you'd think if I say I don't drink, like that should be enough to let you know, like, you don't need to talk about it anymore.
Yeah. It would be enough for me.
People do that follow-up question, like, and it's like, I mean, you're going to put 2 and 2 together or what?
Right. Exactly. But I get it out there.
I allow, they can ask me, and then I'll say, I don't drink. And then if they ask me again, I'm just like, I'm an alcoholic. All right. So like,
yeah.
Just end it. Like, I don't want to do this dance with you. Like, if you can, like, so anyway. And so how was high school for you?
So I gravitated towards sports. I was athletic. Okay student. When I say okay, I was very bored in school. So I would do what needed to get done to get through it, but I never took a book home. So I could get by with that. But after games or whatever, the kegger parties and the partying was on. Yeah, I was there. Yep.
And did it affect your life in any way? When did
but besides doing stupid things, no. I was I functioned with it for quite a few years until I didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
And when did it start to go wrong for you?
So it started, well, I had incidents throughout. I got sober at 43, and I'm a little over 19 years sober.
Right.
But in my 40s, things weren't going well. How's that?
Really? Not till then.
Yeah, I had incidents. But I never got a DUI. All that stuff. And I drank and drove. I'm not bragging. I drank and drove up to my last drink.
And so did you go to college?
Junior college.
Right. Mm-hmm. And what did you study?
Oh, administration of justice.
What does that even mean?
It's kind of a course as if you wanted to be a police officer. I didn't go that route. I went the route into management within retail. But I was even a reserve deputy sheriff for a year out at the county jail.
Right.
And I used to see dudes come through that I knew. You know what I mean?
Right.
And and I didn't want to work in a jail. I knew that after a year. And so I just went a different route. Yeah.
Right. And went into retail, and then you worked your way up through there.
Yep.
And have you stuck with that? Are you still doing
that? I'm in insurance now. I got out of, it's a real good question. I got out of retail in 2013. Yeah, 2013.
13.
Mm-hmm.
So you're sober by then?
Yeah, I got sober in 05, February 27th of 2005.
And you're still working in retail at that point.
Yep.
And
So, well, but yes and no. So I go and see I know something's wrong. I'm having really struggling for about 2 years of, I don't answer my door. I'm depressed. And so I went to a doctor I told her I wanted to see a shrink.
Mm-hmm.
That was my opening line.
Right.
And she said, well, let's just do some blood work and
right.
we'll see what's going on. So she calls me back that night and says, hey, your liver enzymes are 4 times what they should be.
Oh, the good old liver enzyme.
So she goes, when did you have your last drink? And I said, the night, 2 or 3 in the morning before I went and saw you that day at 10.
Right.
And she said, well, I think you have a drinking problem. I won't sign a referral for you to see a shrink. I'll sign a referral for you to see a chemical dependency counselor.
Wow. She's hardcore.
Yeah, she was.
And what was your drinking looking like at that point?
Every day, again, to oblivion. And I'm not the guy that can say, oh, then I was drinking 2/5 a day. I was a cheap drunk throughout my life. I would wake up a lot of times and say, man, I didn't even finish that 5th. It would almost be done. That's enough booze to knock you out. But, I hear some stories about people doing 2/5 a day. I go, God, I was such a cheaper drunk than that. I was a sloppy, cheap
drunk. But I mean, you could buy a handle and the economics would enable you to drink 2/5 a day.
Yeah. If I could get through it. Yeah. I would usually pass out before that, but yeah.
But I mean, cause I wasn't that, I generally drank, cocktails, but I mean, I'd buy like a bunch of handles for a party.
Uh-huh.
And we wouldn't drink all the handles. So then I would be like, oh, I'll just drink the vodka. And then I would drink all the vodka. And then I'd be like, ooh, I guess I'll drink the gin. And then I'd drink all the gin. And then I'd be like, who wants to drink rum? Well, I guess I do, and sort of work my way through the bar and then start over, and then I'd buy bottles of wine and stuff. But I mean, you would go to the liquor store and buy a fifth
of Kettle One, always in the freezer. Right.
And you would drink a 5th a day.
Not a day. It would depend. Right. I wouldn't say I was drinking a 5th a day, but I was drinking, every day. Right. And then if there was a function at work, I was in it. Right.
And would you black out?
Oh yeah. In fact, I tell a story of, it was 1997. I went to an event in Destin, Florida.
Right.
And no one from my company went. They
Where
had
is Destin? I just saw it on TikTok.
On the panhandle of Florida.
Oh,
where where the white beaches are and everything.
Right.
And so I remember no one was there for my company, and I said, I'm just going to take it easy. And this girl came up to me and said, why aren't you drinking? And she handed me a 151 and Coke. Ooh. And like you, I wasn't a rum drinker either. Next thing I know, I started slamming those. Me, this girl, and some dude are in a bar in Alabama. and it was weird to me because I know I was in the bar. I can recollect that. I don't know how I got there.
Right. I hate that. Ooh.
And then the next morning, there's a knock on my hotel door, and I open it up, and it's her. And she goes, I just wanted to make sure you were okay. I don't even know how I got back.
And you were back in Destin? In
my hotel room where the event was. And so somebody, you know what I mean?
Oh,
and so,
God.
Yeah, the blackouts were, the blackouts happened, but the blackouts happened earlier too. I just didn't give much thought to them. But that just time, you don't know what happened.
And was it affecting your work?
So, yeah. So when I went and saw that doctor, I was having big time work issues with my boss.
Like what was happening?
He just wasn't, he just wasn't buying my bullshit. He was calling me on a lot of things, and I was used to kind of getting away with things too. However, as I say that, I was getting new jobs too. I was about the 2-year rule. I'd go get another job.
Right.
So I'd wear my welcome out throughout my career. And so, that's what prompted me to say, I need to see a shrink. Something's going on here. And that's what got me in front of the chemical dependency counselor, who I didn't want to be in front of. And they had me fill out a form 45 minutes before the appointment, and I was somewhat honest on that form.
Right.
Right. And so I get in the office with him. He says, not a lot of discussion. He goes, yeah, I see the issue. We could get you into rehab tomorrow. And it was, that they talk about it in the book. I have a solution, or keep on doing the same old thing. And it's a difficult decision for us. As if going into rehab makes me a loser.
But I mean, had you contemplated up until that point, like getting sober?
Yes. In fact, I had my first AA meeting was 1987, the year my daughter was born.
And how old were you then?
So 25.
Right.
And I went in, I said, man, this program's for me, and then never went back.
What prompted you to go in at 25?
Just drinking a lot.
Right.
And now I'm going to be a dad, and just again, my inability to be responsible.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was weighing on me, those things throughout the years.
And how did you find the meeting? Like who,
I was living in Fresno, California, and I'm pretty sure I had to do the phone book.
Wow. Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because that's like a level of, sort of desperation that usually is enough to get someone sober. I mean, I would find myself, in a wrecked car in jail and just be like, well, that's the price of business,
Right. Right. Wow.
As opposed to like, and I obviously I had moments along the way where I was like, I should deal with this, but it never enough to actually get me to go to an AA meeting. And I wish I had. I always sort of wondered, like, if someone had just dragged me to a meeting when I was 25, if it might have all been different, Well,
then in 1989, I'm having issues again, going through a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to AA, 1989 to 90. Yeah. I'm sober for 13 months.
Oh, wow.
And then I get a job in LA. I don't tell my sponsor I'm moving. I don't tell anybody anything. There's no cell phones in 19. We're not using cell phones in 89, 90. Sure. I moved to LA and just jumped right back into it.
So, and what was the job in LA?
It was a retail gig, a regional manager gig,
right.
With an old company called Payless Drugs, if you remember them.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I was living in North San Diego County, but we had offices in Hemet, beautiful Hemet, California.
Wow. And you would commute from North San Diego to Hemet?
Well, I lived in Bonsall, so you go back through Temecula, that back route, not that far. You really but I had stores all over California.
Right, so you're driving all over the place.
Driving all the time. Right. And
is Hemet nice?
No. No.
I only know Hemet because there's occasionally a wildfire there, and there was the Scientologists.
They were there.
Ron Hubbard's mansion is in Hemet.
Yeah, and I used to see them in their uniforms. So it's funny you say that. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, they live right around the corner here from me too.
Oh, for sure, LA.
Hollywood, so so that's interesting. And like, how many kids did you have at that point?
So I had the one daughter. Now,
you only have one daughter.
Yeah, I have one daughter. She's 37 now. She has 3 kids, and good friends with my ex-wife today too. Her mother and were people in your life excited that you were sober? Like, for these 13 months, were they like, yeah, John's got his shit together? Not so much as when I did it in 2005.
Sure,
not really, not really. And I was going. They were smoking in meetings. Back then.
Were you still with your wife when you were spent 13 months sober?
Separated.
Right.
Yeah. Separated. Right. Yeah. So,
and how was it for you? I mean, that early experience of sobriety,
it wasn't like this time around in 2005. Right. Even though I didn't want to be in rehab the first 3 days, it wasn't like what happened this time around. But I say this to people too, whether 4th, 5th step, all that stuff, whether you're going to go see a shrink or if you're going to go see a shrink, I say that's fine if you need to go get help, but you should be honest with them. So I say that to you because I know I wasn't honest in 89. I wasn't completely honest.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
went through the motions. I did what some people said I should do,
Right.
but it was just a thing.
Right. But you
Yeah.
didn't drink.
I did not.
I mean, but that helps. That can really help. That can be enough
Well,
sometimes.
I think listen to what you said, just the 87 thing, the indoctrination one meeting, then the 89, 13 months, it was in the back of my mind, right? There
Yeah,
is
yeah,
this
no,
place.
no, and that's it. Like
Yeah.
it does. It's like it's sometimes like when I like having done all these interviews, like and I wonder like what is the difference between the people who get sober and the people who die. It's
Mm,
like the people who got sober, they had something back
I
there that they
agree.
were clawing their way back to. There was some bubble of joy and light and happiness that they wanted back that they missed, and they were gonna fucking work to get it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the way I felt anyway.
Oh
I mean, when I
no.
look back at it now, I'm like, oh yeah, there had been a Nick that I liked somewhere way back when. If I could just get back to that guy, maybe I'd be
Yeah.
okay.
I think they use the word willingness. I think there has to be a willingness. In I also, it's not for everybody.
That's true.
And you know what? People don't want to hear that. And I goes, look at, it's obviously from a percentage standpoint, look around you. It's just not for everybody.
So, and then I guess I'm curious in those like months before you went to see the doctor to say, "Hey, I
Mm-hmm.
need a shrink." You mentioned that you like weren't leaving the house. I mean, are you just kind of holed up and drinking on your own time,
Yeah.
basically?
I was living up in Stockton just
Right.
before I moved back to the Bay Area. And so for 2 years in Stockton, I never answered my door.
Right.
I was working, but I would have friends say, "Hey, dude, I came over and knocked, and nobody answered," and I used to just give them said, "Dude, if you're going to come over, you need to call me first,
Right. I'm not answering the
right?"
door.
Yeah, I don't answer doors, and I don't want any surprise visits, right?
Um,
I was doing my thing.
so when this doctor, this a rehab consultant, this chemical dependency
Yeah,
doctor
yep.
says, "Hey, we can get you into rehab." Do you say yes?
Uh, yes, eventually. When I say eventually, within a 5 minute span, right? But there was a 5 minute of awkward, and he's
We're
like,
like,
"What are you considering?" Yeah,
right,
you came to us. And he said, "We can get you in. We got an opening. It was an outpatient program."
right.
So I said, "All right." Well, it gave me 30 days reprieve from my employer. I knew that. I got to go 30 days without even worrying about the job they probably were going to fire me.
Would they pay you for those 30 days?
Yes. Yes. Well,
Right.
it gets even better in that. So I get in there and I'm puffy. I tell everybody I was the John Belushi drunk. I got puffy. Some people get thin. I did not
Right.
get thin. I got
Right.
puffy. And so day one, we're talking, find out that I have to start going to AA meetings too.
Right.
Right. So that comes up day one. I'm like, and so it's 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, and Friday is when you meet. First AA meeting about day 3 of rehab.
Right.
And you know what, dude? I walked into that room and I went, yeah, I know these rooms. I know these rooms. And something clicked with me.
And
And I
that
said,
felt good.
yeah,
It felt good.
it felt crazy good. Yeah.
I know that feeling. I mean, I've gone to like, shitty rooms on the ass end of nowhere and been like, oh wow, I'm home.
Right.
It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm just fine here. I know this. This is good. This works for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So and that's when the light went off with me. And after 30 days, my boss said he didn't want me back.
Right.
And so the HR director called me up and said, "Hey, what are you doing? He doesn't want to let you back." And she met me at a pancake house in Martinez, California, and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm trying to get sober. I'm in rehab."
Mhm.
And she said, "Really?" Her dad was killed by a drunk driver.
Oh wow.
And so she says, "Go ahead. If he doesn't want you back, that's his problem. He doesn't know all the laws. Fill out the paperwork and go on disability." So I went on disability for a year.
Oh wow.
And she said, "After the year's up, we're going to cut you off, but just give me a call and let me know if you want to come back or not."
And I'm just sort of curious about outpatient rehab. What's the
Uh-huh.
time? What's the time
So,
commitment
yep,
for
no. So
outpatient?
105-day outpatient. Now I know after 30 days, I'm doing anywhere from 2 to 5 AA meetings a day.
Wow.
It's my full-time job. I got a
Right.
sponsor. I'm getting commitments, making coffee or whatever. 105-day outpatient. Then at the end of that 105 days, I then signed into a once a week program for a year. And there's people in that program. That one dude got shot in a robbery. It wasn't a recovery thing.
In the outpatient program, when you're not in AA, is there a counselor that you're talking to?
Yeah.
Is there, and they're sort of helping you kind of rebuild your life and develop habits that are maybe more conducive to a productive lifestyle, basically, and
plus
sanity
homework.
and
Plus homework. What are you going to do? What are you going to do at this stage? You're getting ready to get out of here. We're going to graduate you. You need to write this list of what you're going to do. You got to give that list to 5 people in your family or friends to kind of say, yeah, this dude's committed to this thing. And it was through Kaiser, by the way. Dr. Adam Front was the guy's name. He's a PhD psychologist.
And did your insurance pay for it?
They did.
Right. Nice.
They did. And so 105 days of that, still doing AA, and then a 1 year aftercare. So I was going still and seeing somebody for once a week for another year. So I got a lot of stuff out.
Yeah, sure.
You know, we'd be sitting around the room, and I also got to see people go back out in rehab. Right. Oh, and then and then when at the end of the rehab, I then went into a SLE for 90 days.
What is an SLE?
A sober living environment.
Oh, right. Sure.
Right.
Spoken at sober living places. Yeah.
Right. So I did that. And so I was that pink cloud they talk about, dude. I was on fire. I tell everybody it was the biggest non-drug year of my life.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And so then how did your life proceed from there? Did things change for you? Did you get happier? What's the story?
So the year ends on disability. So the year comes up. And I tell them I don't want to come back to work, and I go on unemployment for about 3 months while I'm looking for a job.
Right.
And then I jumped back into the work world, and that was difficult because I was living this little fantasy recovery life.
Right. Yeah.
And now I got to go make money, deal with people, and all that. And that was a struggle for me for probably another year.
Right.
But I got through it. Right. But just my inability sometimes, I tell people this, that sometimes relationships with other human beings can be difficult.
I think that's all human beings. That's all human beings.
Right. But you know what I mean?
And so sure. I think especially in like a retail environment, work environment, like keeping customers happy and like, I don't know. I find it like sobriety for me, like where I use it the most is probably being a parent, where I'm like, it's not my responsibility to fix all their problems. Like I keep my side of the road clean, whatever side of the street clean. Like I do what I say I'm going to do. I'll show up when I say I'm going to show up. And like, and if they don't live up to their side of it, well, that's kind of their problem. It's not really my problem. It is their thing.
I agree. So, so jump back into it. And then 3 years into sobriety is when I started writing.
Oh, right.
And when I say that, you said something when we first started talking about, all those thoughts and dreams we have when we're drinking, the shit we're going to do that we never do.
Right.
Well, I had taken notes hungover that actually turned into my first book.
Right.
Right. But I would have never executed any of that ever without being sober.
And so that book is a memoir of your drinking days?
No, I didn't do that. I write fiction, and I didn't do a memoir. Right. Yeah. My books have all before been different. There's recovery, especially in the one I just talked to you about. But no, it's my stuff's all just up in my head that I need to get out. But
and
not
what kind of fiction is it? Like
so the first so I've written 4 books. Two have been published, 2 self-published.
Right.
The first book I'm talking to you about was 3/5. It's just about this dude's last 3 bottles of alcohol.
Oh, nice. Wow.
And he's on the Central Coast. So it takes place from Pismo Beach all the way up into the California foothills. It's his last 3 bottles of booze. My second book that just got published a year ago is called Bronze Jazz. It's a murder mystery based in San Francisco.
How cool.
Right. And there's some jazz influences in it. And then I wrote a book, kind of a political book that I tried to get published. And because I tried to get that published, Bronze Jazz got published. And it's called Johnny Blue and the Righteous Spin. And the publisher said, I don't want anything to do with anything political. It was right after 2016, you know that?
Right.
So she goes, I don't want any politics. And then I just wrote a short story called Avocado Andy and Troubadour Tim that just got published in May. And it's a book about acceptance. So
that's really cool. I mean,
so 4 different things. Yeah.
And so do you write every day?
Well, I write in my work every day.
Right.
But with these 4 books, I don't write every day now. I did. I wrote 7 days a week for a while because I'm really trying to get them to sell. And that's where I'm totally out of my comfort zone, because there's one thing about doing the work. There's another thing about selling the work.
Right. Promoting them, you mean, basically.
And it's,
and it's check them out.
Yeah. It's difficult to do. There's a lot of people in the game, and
yeah, for sure.
And everybody,
a lot of weird shit in the world too. Like
there is
fake books and,
chat GPT books and
everything.
Yeah.
So, at what point did you transition out of retail?
So 2013. So I moved back I was living in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to tell you,
where in Hawaii?
I was living on Oahu in a town called Aiea. So I tell everybody there's 1.3 million people in Hawaii. 1 million of them live on Oahu.
Right.
So it's just a big city.
Yeah.
But what were you asking me? Oh, I came back from Hawaii. I wanted to finish that novel I was telling you about. And so I took 9 months off, finished that, and then transitioned into the insurance world.
Right.
Yeah. And it was probably a good thing that I did, because retail's changed so much since COVID and all that. You know what I mean?
Yes, it's just bananas. Yeah. I can't tell what's going to happen. Well, with anything,
with anything
kind of weird.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I suppose insurance has gotten weird too. With like, what kind of insurance do you do?
So we insure like a little over 6,000 restaurants in 47 states. So, and they're mostly fast food. So it's been kind of COVID proof.
Yeah, that's pretty stable too.
Right.
And it's like,
yeah. So
it's not like you're insuring beach houses in Destin, Florida,
or houses in the California foothills by the wildfires.
Yeah, terrifying.
Right. Yeah.
And do you feel like sobriety facilitated that transition to a different career, or would it?
Yeah, because I actually did what I wanted to do.
Right.
Fear aside, because it's even to start writing, my initial stuff was crap.
Right. Yeah.
There's always ego. And then when it took me 15 years to get published.
Right.
And then I had to go through an editing process with this woman, and it was brutal.
Right.
So you think something some way, and then there's reality of it. Right. So I'm glad I went through that process of 15 years of it, making no money.
Right.
And, but learning the craft.
Yeah. Yeah. How'd you find your publisher?
So funny story is, I'd put stuff out to be published before, and sometimes you get rejected, but most times you don't hear anything.
You just hear nothing. Yeah.
Nothing. They're going to take the time to say, hey, we're not interested.
Right.
And so I called up I was talking to a marketing guy on Amazon, and I said, hey, what do you guys do to market books? And he said, what kind of books? I said, I wrote a book. He said, you've written books? I go, yeah. He said, I'll send you an email of a lady up in Vancouver. Really weird. Vancouver, Washington.
Yeah.
I had just moved from there back to the Bay Area to get married.
Oh, wow.
Actually lived in the same city as my publisher. We used to go to the same coffee shop, Compass Coffee, in downtown Vancouver. Never met. He said, if something happens with it, just give me a thank you email. So, and I was trying to do that other book I told you about, Johnny Blue and the Righteous Spin. So I got a hold of her. She said, send me the manuscript. I'll get back to you in a couple of weeks. And she said, do you have anything else besides this book?
Right.
And I said I had another novel that I self-published. She said, send me that manuscript too. Right. So I didn't hear anything from her for 3 weeks. And she called me up and she said, I'd love to publish this one book with you. And I'm not interested in the political book. And she said, but you're going to have to rewrite it.
Right.
From past tense to first person.
Right.
And she said, you have to break it down to smaller chapters. She said, you're a good writer. You're even better storyteller. She said, but you don't know how to put a book together.
Right.
And it was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds amazing.
So 2.5 years before I got it right for her. Yeah.
And what's that book called again?
It's called Bronze Jazz.
Bronze Jazz. And that's available.
Yeah. They're all available on Amazon. Yeah. And then she asked me for a short story that I had written for my grandson that I wasn't going to publish at all.
Right.
And that's how that second one got published.
Right.
And so that was just something I had written.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good story, John. I don't know. Do you have more you want to say here, or
Well, you know, this is the third podcast I've done. And what I wanted to say is I really enjoy this format.
Right.
And the first one I did was a guy from Minnesota. I was so nervous. And but not when I start talking to another alcoholic or addict.
Right. Yeah.
This is no different than me and you sitting down in a coffee shop and BSing. And I just love this. And I listen to podcasts, not necessarily recovery, while I work during the day just to hear people talk.
Yeah, it's I don't know. There's something really nice about a good conversation. And also, I mean, I feel like it's interesting. I mean, you know, I work in the entertainment business, and like, you know, you meet people all day in the entertainment business, and like you sit down and you have these chats. And sometimes I'll sit down with somebody and it will get really real really quick. And I'm like, this person's probably sober, you know, and inevitably they are, you know, and it's like, you know, I think that there's something interesting about talking honestly about, you know, the real questions of life and the real struggles of life. And I love hearing how people make it through. I mean, I feel like honestly completing a novel is like an act of faith. And you know, getting up out of bed and fighting the good fight every day is also an act of faith. So
and going through talking to my sister pretty regularly now.
Yeah.
It's really weird. Ironically, she's up in the state of Washington. She went through the Kaiser 105-day outpatient as well. So,
wow.
2005,
you guys have all this stuff in common.
It's changed though. It's kind of funny. Right. It's changed. She does a lot more stuff online.
Right. Yeah, of course.
Right.
So much more of everything's online.
I had to do it in person, but the same concepts, same meetings and all that. And just, it's interesting to see someone in their first year, because she's coming up on a year on December 3rd. And she goes, is this a big deal? I said, you know, the 1 year through the history of AA, and I dove into the history of it. 1 year was the big deal. You know, if you go to the Midwest, in California, we know everybody's sobriety date, how many years you got, 15, 12, 11, whatever. But in the Midwest, it was really more about getting that 1 year. Not that you were going to stop. You were going to get more years if you stayed the program. But the 1 year was truly, when people get that, that's a bigger deal than I think we even make it out to be today.
Well, that makes sense. You know, it's sort of like that year becomes the foundation on which everything else is built, you know? And it's interesting too. I was reading about, you know, psychedelics and the effect of how people have been using them to treat addiction and depression and all anxiety, whatever. And I just remember them talking about, like, you know, clinically, a person is considered recovered from addiction after abstaining for a relatively short time. You know, I mean, maybe it's a year, or maybe it's, you know, they consider a year success, you know, whereas obviously in recovery, I mean, especially in the, you know, California recovery, it's like, you know, people go years and years, but like from a clinical standpoint, it's like, hey, if you can not have a drink for a year or whatever it is, I can't remember what the time frame is, but maybe it's 18 months. That's a success. Like, that's done. You won, you know? So,
right.
it's just kind of interesting. I mean, obviously from a lifetime perspective, whatever the clinicians say is irrelevant. I mean, when people ask me, there's always, I mean, not so much anymore, but certainly when I was younger and partying a lot and I had a lot of friends who were partying, and I had stopped drinking before a lot of them, and they would say, well, do I have a drinking problem? And I'd be like, well, do you drink more than you would like to drink? That's my fundamental question. And if the answer is yes, well, then yeah, you kind of have a drinking problem.
Right.
Well, John, thanks for coming on. It was really great to meet you. And
Thank you as well.
I
I
hope if
appreciate talking to you.
you're down in LA, you'll look me up, and I'm gonna have a look at your books, Bronze Jazz. What are the other 3 books, if you could say them?
Avocado Andy and Troubadour Tim.
Uh-huh.
3/5, and then Johnny Blue and the Righteous Spin.
Amazing. Well, congrats, man.
Thank you very much, brother.
Thanks for coming on.
Take care, Nick.
Take
Bye-bye.
it easy. Thanks for listening. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/thedrunkalogs.